So thank you so much for your willingness to speak to me about the pharmaceutical industry and specifically how China is a player in the industry. So I'd love if you could just start by telling me a bit about yourself and your background and what you do.
Sounds great. Good morning. My name is Chen, and I am a manager at Point Advisory. We're a management consulting firm here at Washington, D.C. So our firm serves different clients across different industries, providing strategic insights and recommendations to solve our clients' business problems. But my focus is primarily on the pharma sector, and pharma and healthcare. So yeah, very glad to be here and, very excited about our brief conversation.
Absolutely. So now I'll move into asking you just a few questions. So first, I'd love to know how you think the pharmaceutical industry contributes to the global economy and what are some of the key factors for growth in this industry?
Yeah, great question. So I think, definitely the pharma industry is a critical component for the global economy. So if we just look at, healthcare spending from a GDP standpoint, according to WHO, healthcare spending makes up about around like 10% of the world GDP. So this including, spending in the pharma, hospital services, nursing care, and other medical services as well. So if we just look at US alone, healthcare is still a very major sector, around 18% of the country's GDP. And also, if we look at China, healthcare spending is also increasing rapidly, so around 6.6 of the GDP. And this number is definitely expected to rise as the government focuses more on the healthcare reform and improving the quality of healthcare services across the nation. So you also asked about the key drivers. So I think, key drivers for the growth, including, aging population, right? Especially in the emerging markets such as China, aging is and will be a huge problem. So aging will definitely increase the demand for healthcare services and pharmaceuticals, and also technological advancements such as biotech and digital health, and more recently the AI, right, are transforming how we develop drugs and treat those diseases. And also, we can't forget about regulations and healthcare policies. They're absolutely opening up more new opportunities. And also, people living with chronic disease are, more focused on staying healthy these days. There's definitely a bigger push for medical care and pharmaceutical products. So all these elements coming together, to fuel the rapid growth for these industries, right? Driving the need for, continuous innovation.
Absolutely. And just as a follow-up to that, in terms of AI, you mentioned how AI is becoming such a big player in basically every industry. Do you think that that might take away from some of the growth in terms of like jobs in the pharmaceutical industry for humans, that is? Do you think AI will take away some of that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So in my perspective, I don't think it's going to take away people's job completely because I feel like pharmaceutical is such a unique space. You need human power to really brainstorm all those, different targets. I think AI is definitely facilitating this process in a faster way, but definitely, human power is cannot be replaced, especially when you think about clinical trials where we all need, people to really join those clinical trials. And also we need, coordinators to really facilitate those process. In terms of, collecting data and, analyzing those data, I think AI is definitely going to be a huge factor in the data analysis process. But in terms of human, I don't think it's going to go away.
Okay, that's very interesting. So
Yeah.
thank you for your thoughts on that. Getting a bit more specific, could you discuss how the regulatory frameworks in the US and China differ in terms of drug approval processes, intellectual property protection, and market access for pharmaceutical companies, and what impact this has on innovation and market competitiveness?
Yeah, great question as well. So I think, the US and China have distinct regulatory environments that impact the pharma industry. So in the US, we know that FDA has rigorous drug approval process. They usually requires extensive clinical trials and also comprehensive data analysis before the market entry, right? So just to make sure high standards for safety and efficacy. But can be time consuming and costly. But China has been streamlining this approval process to encourage more innovation and also bring treatments to the market faster. So just a little bit of background here. I think historically, drug approval in China can be slower compared to US. But recently, the reforms by the Chinese National Medical Products Administration. Wow, that's a long name. We know as CFDA, so China's FDA. So they have been significantly, streamlined the process. These reforms also include, accepting data from foreign companies, expediting approvals for innovative drugs, and also, a more transparent process, which is all we need. So you also asked about, the IP protection. So this can be definitely stronger in US, providing, incentives for innovation by allowing companies to recoup their investments. So we know that it really takes a decade for a drug to, bring a drug from the lab to the market, right? So think about the R&D spending and all the clinical trial costs. It's going to be a lot. So in general, innovative drugs like biologics will have, 20-year patent protections. To block the biosimilar entry. If we think about China, China definitely has made strides in the recent years to strengthen the IP law and attract more foreign, innovative and investments better. So these efforts, also include, strengthen patent laws, extend the patent term, improving the overall compensation for patent, infringement and enhancing, the IP rights. But despite, all these improvements, there are still concerns, especially with the IP, particularly how well laws are enforced and also the ongoing risk for IP theft. So this can be definitely a huge roadblock for foreign pharmaceutical companies. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Do you think that in China there are maybe companies that kind of try to skirt around these laws and kind of not really follow them just in order to kind of get their drugs into the pipeline as fast as possible? Or do you think that, I know it's so complicated in the US and there's so many rules you have to follow that it's pretty hard to kind of skirt around those laws? I'm sure maybe some people do it, but I'm curious about your thoughts on that in China.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some loopholes in the regulatory process, especially when I mentioned about, transparent review process. It's also definitely a really big focus for China right now. So I would say, the process is less transparent in China compared to US because I've exposure in both, kind of both side, but I feel like, we definitely need to do a lot in terms of transparency, especially with government controlling a lot of the data and, has more visibility to the data and also the process itself. So yes, there's definitely a lot more to do, especially in terms of the regulatory process and also governance. So I feel like, transparency is definitely going to be a huge problem and also something that we need to work on going forward.
Absolutely. So moving on to my next question, in what ways are US-China collaborations in pharmaceutical research, clinical trials, drug manufacturing contributing to advancements in healthcare delivery, patient care outcomes, and the development of novel therapies for complex diseases on a global scale?
Yeah, great question. So I would say collaborations between both countries is definitely a win-win situation for both sides. These partnership, kind of mix the strong R&D capabilities of the US, and also China has massive manufacturing capabilities and also a huge patient base, right? So, thinking about patient enrollment, it can be really faster in China because of the large patient base and also the labor costs and manufacturing may be cheaper in China as well. So I feel like this combo is pushing healthcare forward, making it quicker to get innovative drugs off the ground and improving patients' outcome in general through the shared knowledge and resources. So think about, particular disease. I think the rare disease really pop up because, in the United States, it's a big focus right now for clinical trials, right? The improvement pace can be slower. It really takes years, especially for those rare disease. You can't really find patient patient population that easily, right? So thinking about, the collaboration between both companies, I feel like, it's going to be really speed up the process for getting new treatments ready.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so, in terms of, US-China relations, it's very complicated at the moment, and
Yeah.
who knows what the future holds in terms of that relationship. But how do you see that really impacting you mentioned, how much benefit there is from the relationship between US and China, but if that were to change, do you think that that would be a big step back for the pharmaceutical industry and clinical trials, as a whole?
Yeah, I would say it definitely depends where the direction is. If we think about the positive side, if everything goes well, I would say the policy really gonna make things really faster. But from the, a couple of reasons I've mentioned below, mentioned earlier, especially around, laboring costs and also manufacturing costs and also, the time for enrollment speed for the clinical trials. I know, there's still huge unmet needs in the U.S. market also, and also Chinese market. U.S. market also have the most advancements across around the globe. I feel like, there's still unmet needs in China as well. Bringing these therapy to China is going to be benefiting on the both sides. For U.S. pharmaceutical companies, they can definitely, get a lot of revenue from China's, market because of the large patient population, and also that incentive more research and development, right, for better therapies, and also from a Chinese side because we are probably, not getting, advanced therapies as the United States. So bringing those new therapies to the patients also, definitely going to be a huge benefit as well. So I would say it really depends on how the policy is going to change. If everything progresses well as we expected, I feel like it's definitely going to be a win-win on both sides.
Absolutely. That's really interesting. I have always kind of had that thought in the back of my head and
Yeah.
wondered kind of what impacts it would have on the pharmaceutical industry. So that's really helpful. And with that, thank you so much for your time and help with this project today. I really appreciate the time you took to speak with me.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to help.